Captain Zara Washington stood frozen as blood trickled from her split lip, the airport terminal suddenly silent. Just seconds ago, the arrogant white pilot Maxwell Thornton had slapped her across the face, believing she was merely another passenger he could bully. Now, as she slowly reached into her blazer and pulled out her badge, revealing she was not only Millfield's first black female chief of police, but also heading the federal investigation into airline discrimination. The color drained from Thornton's face. This wasn't just assault, it was career suicide. Could one impulsive act of racism bring down an entire system of discrimination that had operated in the shadows for years? Before we dive into this shocking story of injustice and redemption, let me know where you're watching from. If you believe in standing up for justice and exposing discrimination wherever it hides, hit that like and subscribe button to stay updated on more powerful true stories that need to be told. 12 hours earlier, Chief Zara Washington stood in front of her bathroom mirror, carefully removing her police uniform. Today would be different. After 3 months as Millfield's first black female chief of police, she was about to conduct an undercover operation personally. Skyway Airlines had accumulated dozens of discrimination complaints, but evidence kept mysteriously disappearing before any meaningful action could be taken. Zara tucked her badge into her blazer pocket and took a deep breath. The department had suggested sending another officer, but she knew why they really didn't want her to go. They still didn't believe she deserved her position. Lieutenant Parker's words from yesterday's meeting echoed in her mind. Perhaps someone with more experience should handle this sensitive matter. She knew what he really meant. Someone white. She adjusted her simple blue dress and nodded at her reflection. Sometimes you had to see things for yourself. The taxi dropped her at Millfield International Airport at precisely 7:30 a.m. Zara had deliberately booked a first-class ticket to Skyway's most profitable route. Discrimination complaints seemed to cluster around these high-value flights. She approached the check-in counter, where a blonde attendant was chatting amicably with a white businessman. When it was Zara's turn, the woman's smile disappeared. "ID and boarding pass," she said curtly, not making eye contact. Zara complied silently, observing. The attendant scrutinized her ID longer than she had for previous passengers. "Is there a problem?" Zara asked. "Just doing my job," the woman replied with a thin-lipped smile, finally returning her documents. "Next security checkpoint is to your right." As Zara walked away, she heard the attendant warmly welcoming the next passenger. At security, despite having TSA pre-check, she was pulled aside for a random screening. She noticed 3 other black passengers receiving the same treatment while white travelers breezed through. She made mental notes of names and badge numbers. After clearing security, Zara headed to her gate. That's when she first encountered Maxwell Thornton. The pilot was standing by the gate desk, his captain's hat tucked under one arm, laughing with the gate agents. An elderly black woman was trying to get their attention regarding boarding procedures. "Excuse me," the woman said repeatedly, but Thornton and the agents continued their conversation. When she finally touched Thornton's sleeve, he turned with an irritated expression. "Ma'am, we're in the middle of something. If you have questions about boarding, wait your turn," he snapped. Zara watched as the elderly woman retreated, embarrassed. Moments later, a white couple approached with the same question. Thornton smiled broadly. "Of course, let me explain that for you," he said, taking time to detail the process. Zara felt her jaw tighten, but reminded herself she was undercover. She couldn't jeopardize the investigation for one incident. But as boarding began, the pattern continued. White passengers were greeted warmly. Black and brown passengers received curt nods or were asked additional questions about their tickets. On the plane, Zara settled into her first-class seat. 15 minutes after takeoff, a flight attendant approached her. "Ma'am, we have a situation. We need this seat for another passenger. Would you mind moving to coach?" Zara glanced around at the 2 empty first-class seats nearby. "I purchased this specific seat," she replied calmly. "May I ask why I need to move when there are empty seats available?" The flight attendant's smile tightened. "It's a balance issue. Captain's orders." Just then, a white man in an expensive suit appeared behind the attendant. "Is my seat ready?" he asked, not even looking at Zara. "We're just sorting it out, Mr. Westfield," the attendant replied. Zara straightened in her seat. "I paid for first class and I'll be staying in first class," she said firmly. The attendant's face hardened. "I'll get the captain." Minutes later, Maxwell Thornton strode down the aisle, his face already set in annoyance. "What seems to be the problem here?" he asked, addressing the attendant, not Zara. "This passenger is refusing to comply with crew instructions," the attendant said. Thornton finally looked at Zara. Recognition flickered in his eyes from their gate encounter. "Ma'am, when flight crew gives you instructions, they're not suggestions. It's for safety." Zara remained calm. "Captain, I purchased this seat. There are other empty seats in first class. This gentleman can take one of those." "Listen," Thornton leaned closer, voice lowering. "We can do this the easy way or the hard way. Either move to the seat we've assigned in coach, or we can make an emergency landing and have you removed." Other passengers were watching now. Some had phones out, recording. Zara knew she should probably back down to maintain her cover, but something in his tone, the sheer arrogance of it, made her hold firm. "I believe that would be discriminatory, Captain. I'm not moving." Thornton's face flushed red. "You people always make everything about race. This is about aircraft safety and my authority as captain." Several passengers gasped. The businessman, Westfield, shifted uncomfortably. "Maybe I can take another seat," he suggested. "No," Thornton snapped. "This has become a matter of compliance." He turned back to Zara. "Last chance. Move or face consequences." Zara looked him directly in the eyes. "Your demand is unlawful. I'm staying right here." What happened next occurred so quickly that passengers would later give conflicting accounts. Thornton's hand moved in a blur, connecting with Zara's face with enough force to snap her head to the side. Pain exploded across her cheek and lip. The plane went absolutely silent. Blood trickled from her split lip. With deliberate slowness, Zara dabbed at her lip with a napkin. Then she reached into her blazer and pulled out her badge. "Captain Maxwell Thornton, I am Chief Zara Washington of the Millfield Police Department. You are under arrest for assault and battery, and as it happens, I'm also heading the federal investigation into discrimination practices at Skyway Airlines." The blood drained from Thornton's face as smartphone flashes lit up the cabin like lightning. The flight made an emergency landing, not to remove Zara, but to have Thornton taken into custody. As airport security and Zara's backup officers led him through the terminal, Thornton kept repeating, "This is a misunderstanding. I didn't know who she was." As Thornton was led away in handcuffs, the airport terminal buzzed with whispers and the constant clicking of phone cameras. Captain Maxwell Thornton, Skyway's decorated senior pilot, kept attempting to explain himself to anyone who would listen. "It was a misunderstanding about aircraft safety," he insisted, as security escorted him toward the airport holding area. "I didn't know she was a police officer." Zara stood to the side, pressing a tissue to her still bleeding lip while Officer Jenkins, one of her most trusted deputies, took her statement. "Are you all right, Chief?" he asked, his eyes concerned. "I've had worse," she replied, though her cheek throbbed painfully. Already the incident was spreading across social media. Shark pilot slaps chief was trending within minutes. Airport security had established a perimeter, but news crews were assembling outside like vultures sensing a fresh kill. Zara's phone rang. The mayor's name flashed on the screen. She sighed and answered. "Chief Washington," she said formally. "Zara, what the hell is happening? I'm seeing videos all over Twitter." Mayor Richard Coleman's voice was tight with barely controlled panic. "I'm handling it, sir. Captain Thornton assaulted me during my undercover investigation of Skyway." A long pause followed. "Look, Zara, I need you to handle this quietly. Skyway employs thousands in our city. We can't afford a PR nightmare." Zara frowned. "Sir, he assaulted me in front of dozens of witnesses. This isn't going away quietly. Just..." The mayor's voice dropped lower. "Think about the bigger picture here. Community relations, jobs, the city's reputation." Something in his tone made Zara's instincts flare. This wasn't just about public relations. "I'll keep you updated, sir," she said non-committally and ended the call. Officer Jenkins raised an eyebrow. Mayor wants it buried. Apparently, Zara replied, watching as Thornton was led into a private room. Let's finish processing the scene. 2 hours later, after giving formal statements and ensuring Thornton was properly processed, Zara was preparing to leave when her phone rang again. This time, an unknown number. Chief Washington, she answered. Chief, this is Sherman Whitfield, CEO of Skyway Airlines. The voice was smooth, practiced in crisis management. I wanted to personally apologize for Captain Thornton's inexcusable behavior. This does not reflect our company values. Zara's grip tightened on her phone. Mr. Whitfield, I appreciate the call, but this is now a criminal matter. Of course, he said quickly. But perhaps we could discuss this in person? I'd like to offer proper restitution and hear about your concerns directly. My office, say, in an hour? Zara considered declining, but realized this might provide valuable insight for her investigation. I'll be there. Skyway's corporate headquarters occupied the top 10 floors of Millfield's tallest building. The security desk had been alerted to expect her, and she was ushered directly to an express elevator. Sherman Whitfield's office featured floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. The man himself rose from behind an imposing desk as she entered. Tall, silver-haired, with the tan of someone who vacationed on private beaches, Whitfield extended his hand with practiced charm. Chief Washington, thank you for coming. Please have a seat. Can I offer you anything? Water? Coffee? Water, please, Zara said, taking the offered seat but maintaining formal posture. Whitfield pressed a button, and an assistant appeared with water so quickly Zara suspected she'd been waiting just outside. Now, Whitfield said, sitting across from her, I want to express my deepest apologies for today's incident. Captain Thornton's actions were completely unacceptable, and yet consistent with numerous complaints we've received about Skyway's treatment of minority passengers, Zara replied, taking a sip of water. Whitfield's smile faltered slightly. Isolated incidents that we take very seriously. He opened a drawer and placed a folder on the desk between them. I'd like to offer a settlement, full compensation for any medical expenses, pain and suffering, and a generous additional sum. In return, we'd ask for a non-disclosure agreement regarding today's events. Zara didn't touch the folder. Mr. Whitfield, I'm not here as a victim, seeking compensation. I'm here as the chief of police investigating a pattern of civil rights violations. Whitfield's expression cooled. Of course, but surely we can resolve this particular incident amicably. As he shifted in his chair, Zara noticed a framed photo on the credenza behind him. It showed Whitfield on a golf course with his arm around Mayor Coleman. In the background were several other familiar faces from the city council. You and the mayor seem close, she observed. Whitfield glanced at the photo. Richard and I serve on several community boards together. He's been a strong advocate for business growth in Millfield. I'm sure he has, Zara said, rising to her feet. Mr. Whitfield, I'll be pursuing both criminal charges against Captain Thornton and a broader investigation into discriminatory practices at Skyway. I suggest you prepare your legal team. Whitfield's facade of friendliness evaporated. Chief Washington, I would hate to see a promising career derailed by overreach. These investigations have a way of finding unexpected targets. The threat was barely veiled. Is that so? Zara replied coolly. Then I look forward to seeing what we uncover. She left without taking the settlement folder, feeling Whitfield's eyes boring into her back. In the lobby, she noticed a security guard speaking into his radio while watching her. As she drove back to police headquarters, a black SUV with tinted windows followed at a discreet distance. Too discreet to be coincidental. The game had changed, and Zara was beginning to understand. She'd stumbled onto something much bigger than one pilot's racial prejudice. What would you do if you were in Zara's position? Would you take the easy path and accept a quiet settlement, or would you stand firm and pursue justice no matter the consequences? Comment number 1, if you think she should push forward with the investigation, or number 2, if you think she should consider the mayor's warning. If you believe in standing up against discrimination, even when powerful forces try to stop you, Hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories of courage in the face of injustice. What dangers await Chief Washington as she digs deeper into this conspiracy? Will her position protect her or make her an even bigger target? Stay tuned to find out. When Zara arrived at police headquarters, the atmosphere felt different. Officers who normally greeted her with respect now averted their eyes or suddenly found paperwork fascinating. Her administrative assistant, normally chatty, gave her a tight-lipped nod. "Chief, there are some gentlemen waiting in your office," she said, not quite meeting Zara's eyes. "They said it's urgent." Zara checked her watch. Less than 4 hours since the incident with Thornton, and already something felt wrong. "Who are they?" Her assistant hesitated. "Internal Affairs, ma'am. Lieutenant Bradley and Sergeant Myers." A cold feeling settled in Zara's stomach. Internal Affairs should have notified her before showing up, especially in her own department. Protocol required it. She composed herself and headed to her office. 2 men in suits rose as she entered. She recognized them both, though she'd had minimal dealings with IA since taking the chief position. "Gentlemen," she said, moving behind her desk without offering to shake hands. "To what do I owe this unexpected visit?" Lieutenant Bradley, a thin man with perpetually pursed lips, placed a folder on her desk. "Chief Washington, we've received some concerning information regarding the incident at the airport today." Zara raised an eyebrow. "That was fast. I'm still filing my own report." "Yes, well," Sergeant Myers interjected, "that's part of the issue. We've received evidence suggesting the events didn't unfold as you've described." Zara leaned back in her chair. "Evidence? From whom?" Bradley opened the folder. "An anonymous source provided security footage that appears to show you provoking Captain Thornton before the physical altercation." He slid several grainy printouts toward her. The images showed her and Thornton on the plane, but the angles were strange. In one image, it appeared she was standing aggressively close to him. "This is doctored," she said immediately. "I remained seated throughout our interaction until after he struck me." Myers shook his head sadly, as if disappointed in a child. "We also have witness statements from flight attendants and passengers corroborating Captain Thornton's account that you became belligerent when asked to change seats for safety reasons." He produced several typed statements, all similarly worded. Zara scanned them, noting that each described her as aggressive, confrontational, and playing the race card. One even claimed she had threatened to use her position to punish the airline. "These are fabricated," she said, keeping her voice level despite rising anger. "There were dozens of passengers recording. The actual footage will show the truth." "Until we can verify all evidence," Bradley said. "The commissioner has requested we conduct a full investigation. In the meantime," he produced another document. "This is a temporary suspension notice, pending investigation of misconduct." Zara stared at the paper, then at the signature at the bottom. Deputy Chief Richard Evans. Her own second-in-command had signed off on her suspension without even speaking to her first. "This is procedurally incorrect," she said, not touching the document. "IA recommendations for suspension require review by the police commission before implementation." Bradley smirked slightly. "The commission held an emergency session 30 minutes ago. In your absence, Deputy Chief Evans represented the department's interests." The pieces clicked into place. This wasn't just happening. It had been orchestrated with remarkable speed and precision. Someone had laid groundwork, made calls, prepared statements, doctored evidence, all within hours of the incident. "I'll need my lawyer present before we continue this discussion," Zara said, reaching for her phone. "And I expect full access to all evidence being presented against me." "Of course," Myers said with false sympathy. "But until this matter is resolved, we'll need to collect your badge and service weapon." For a moment, Zara considered refusing, but she knew the procedural playbook too well. Fighting now would only give them more ammunition. Slowly, she unclipped her badge and removed her sidearm, placing both on the desk. "I expect these returned promptly once this farce is concluded," she said coldly. "Officer Ramirez will escort you out," Bradley said, gesturing to the door where a uniformed officer waited awkwardly. Zara grabbed her personal belongings, aware of eyes watching her from every corner of the bullpen as she walked out with Ramirez beside her. No one spoke. No one offered support. 3 months as chief, and this was all the loyalty she had earned. Or perhaps fear of association with her outweighed any loyalty. Outside, the late afternoon sun felt mockingly bright. "I'm sorry about this, Chief," Ramirez said quietly as they reached her car. "Something's not right about how fast this all happened." At least one officer still had a conscience. "Keep your eyes open, Ramirez, but don't put yourself at risk. This goes deeper than Thornton or Skyway." He nodded and retreated to the building as Zara got into her car. She sat for a moment, processing. Her phone buzzed with news alerts about her alleged misconduct and pending investigation. Somehow the story had already leaked. She started the engine and pulled away from the precinct, mind racing through options. She needed allies, evidence, and a safe place to work from. The road home took her through a quiet industrial area. As she approached a particularly deserted stretch, she noticed headlights in her rearview mirror, approaching rapidly. The black SUV she'd spotted earlier pulled alongside, then swerved sharply into her lane. Zara's police training kicked in. She braked hard and turned into the skid as her car was forced off the road. The vehicle hit the shoulder and spun, finally stopping in a cloud of dust. Before she could recover, 2 men in dark clothing approached her car, one on each side. Neither bothered to hide their faces. The one at her window she recognized as Skyway's head of security from his ID badge at headquarters. He leaned down, his expression flat. "Chief Washington, consider this a friendly warning. Drop the Thornton case. Forget about Skyway. Some investigations aren't worth the personal cost." The other man said nothing, but his hand rested meaningfully on a bulge under his jacket. "Do we understand each other?" Skyway's security chief asked. Zara met his gaze steadily. "Perfectly. You've just added witness intimidation and threatening a police officer to the growing list of charges." The man's eyes hardened. "No witnesses. Here, Chief. And from what I hear, you're not a police officer at the moment. Think about that." A vehicle approached on the main road, and both men quickly retreated to their SUV and sped away. Zara sat shaking, not from fear, but from rage. They had suspended her, doctored evidence against her, and now physically threatened her within hours. Whoever was behind this had resources, connections, and frightening efficiency. This wasn't just about one incident of discrimination or one arrogant pilot. She'd stumbled onto something systemic and powerful, and now she was alone, without the authority of her badge or the protection of her department. But they had made a critical mistake. They'd underestimated her. Zara Washington had not become the first black female police chief in Millfield by backing down from challenges. She started her car again and headed not toward her home, which she now realized might be unsafe, but to the one person in the city she trusted implicitly, retired Judge Eleanor Harrison, her mentor, and the woman who had encouraged her to apply for the chief position in the first place. Whatever she was facing, she would not face it alone. And whoever orchestrated this would soon learn they had created not a victim, but a formidable enemy. Judge Eleanor Harrison's Victorian home sat on a quiet street lined with ancient oaks. At 73, the retired judge remained one of the most respected legal minds in the state, having broken barriers as one of the first black female judges in a predominantly white male system. She opened her door before Zara could even knock. "I've been watching the news," she said, ushering Zara inside. "Come in before someone sees you." The interior was warm and filled with books, African art, and photographs documenting a lifetime of legal activism. Judge Harrison led Zara to her study and closed the door. "Tell me everything," she said, settling into a worn leather chair. "Not the news version. What really happened?" For the next hour, Zara detailed the events: the undercover operation, Thornton's assault, Whitfield's thinly veiled threats, the suspiciously quick internal affairs investigation, and finally, the roadside intimidation. Judge Harrison listened, without interruption, her expression growing grimmer with each revelation. "They moved remarkably fast," she said when Zara finished. "That suggests two things. They have people embedded throughout the system, and whatever you've stumbled onto is significant enough to warrant immediate containment. I need help, Judge, Zara admitted. I can't use official channels, and I don't know who in my department I can trust. Judge Harrison nodded thoughtfully. First, you need legal representation. Not just any lawyer, but someone with civil rights expertise who isn't afraid of powerful opponents. She picked up her phone and dialed a number from memory. Marcus, it's Eleanor Harrison. I have a situation that requires your particular talents. How soon can you be at my house? 20 minutes later, Marcus Chen arrived. In his mid-40s, with sharp eyes behind stylish glasses, he had built a reputation as one of the most relentless civil rights attorneys in the region. After introductions and a brief recap, he got straight to business. They've orchestrated a sophisticated hit job, he observed. The speed suggests preparation. I suspect they've had contingency plans ready for anyone who threatened to expose their practices. But why go nuclear over one incident? Zara asked. Because it's not one incident, Judge Harrison interjected. You said yourself there have been multiple complaints about Skyway. What if Thornton isn't just a bad apple but part of a pattern they've been covering up? Marcus nodded in agreement. We need to build two parallel cases. Your personal defense against these fabricated charges and the broader investigation into Skyway that you started. Without my badge or department resources? Zara asked skeptically. Without official resources, Judge Harrison corrected, but not without allies. She turned to Marcus. Can you get the original flight manifest and contact information for the passengers? We need uncontaminated witness statements. Already working on it, he said, typing rapidly on his laptop. I've also filed for preservation of all security. Footage from the airport and plane. They'll try to lose it, but the legal notice creates consequences if they do. Zara's phone buzzed. A text from Officer Ramirez. Need to talk. Safe to meet. She showed the message to the others. Can we trust him? Marcus asked. My instinct says yes, Zara replied. He was genuinely uncomfortable with the suspension process. Have him meet you here, Judge Harrison decided. I'll observe and make my own assessment. When Officer Ramirez arrived an hour later, he wasn't alone. With him were Sergeant Diaz and Officer Kim, both looking nervous but determined. We're not the only ones who think something's wrong, Ramirez explained. But we're the only ones willing to stick our necks out right now. Sergeant Diaz, a 15-year veteran, nodded in agreement. Deputy Chief Evans called an all-hands meeting after you left. Said you were under investigation for fabricating discrimination claims and abusing your authority. It didn't sit right with some of us. Officer Kim, one of the few Asian American women on the force, added, especially those of us who've experienced the kind of discrimination you were investigating. We've been keeping our heads down, but this crossed a line. For the first time since the airport incident, Zara felt a spark of hope. I need to continue my investigation unofficially. It's dangerous, potentially career-ending if we fail. With respect, Chief, Ramirez said, our careers won't mean much if we stand by while this happens. With Judge Harrison's home as their base of operations, the unconventional task force began building their case. Marcus used his legal connections to obtain employment records from Skyway, revealing Thornton had a history of passenger complaints that had been buried. Officer Kim, working carefully to avoid detection, accessed police records showing previous incidents at the airport that had been mysteriously downgraded or dismissed. Sergeant Diaz tapped his community contacts, finding former Skyway employees willing to speak about internal discrimination. By midnight, a pattern was emerging. Skyway Airlines had systematically discriminated against minority passengers and employees, while burying complaints through a combination of settlements, intimidation, and apparent assistance from officials within multiple city departments. This goes beyond normal corporate misconduct, Marcus observed as they reviewed their findings. The level of coordination between Skyway, parts of the police department, and possibly the mayor's office suggests something more organized. Like what? Officer Kim asked. I'm not sure yet, Marcus admitted. But follow the money. Corporations this size don't risk legal exposure without significant financial motivation. Judge Harrison, who had been quietly reviewing documents, looked up. We need a whistleblower, someone inside Skyway with access to internal communications. I might know someone, Sergeant Diaz said hesitantly. My cousin works in their IT department. He's mentioned ethical concerns before. Reach out carefully, Zara cautioned. No electronic communications they might monitor. As their investigation deepened, they identified several other passengers from Zara's flight, willing to provide statements contradicting the fabricated witnesses internal affairs had produced. A flight attendant who had been on board also contacted Marcus anonymously, confirming Zara's account and revealing she'd been pressured to sign a false statement. By dawn, they had the beginnings of a solid counter case. Zara finally stepped outside for fresh air, exhausted but encouraged. Judge Harrison joined her on the porch. We're making progress, the older woman said, but be prepared for more retaliation. They'll realize soon that you're not backing down. I can handle whatever they throw at me, Zara replied. It's not just about me anymore. It's about every person who's faced discrimination and been silenced. Judge Harrison smiled approvingly. That's why you were the right choice for chief, despite what some people think. The moment of solidarity was shattered by Zara's phone ringing. It was Marcus, who had left an hour earlier to retrieve additional files from his office. Someone broke into my apartment, Zara said, her voice tight with anger as she listened. They took my laptop and the case files I had at home. Are you somewhere safe? Marcus asked urgently. Yes, but that's not all. My security cameras were disabled during the break-in. This wasn't a random burglary. They're getting desperate, Judge Harrison observed after Zara ended the call. That means we're on the right track. Or it means they're escalating, Zara countered. We need to move faster. If they're willing to break into my home, what else might they do? The answer came sooner than expected. As the sun rose fully, Officer Ramirez rushed into the study where they had reconvened. Chief, you need to see this. He turned on the television. A local morning news program was showing Zara's official department photograph with the headline, Police Chief under investigation for false discrimination claims. The anchor was mid-sentence. Sources within the department claim Chief Washington has a history of making unsubstantiated accusations of racism. The mayor's office has declined to comment on whether this reflects a pattern of behavior predating her appointment as chief. Zara stared at the screen, a cold realization settling over her. They weren't just trying to discredit her investigation or force her to drop the case. They were systematically destroying her reputation, her career, and potentially her future. This was character assassination, meticulously planned and executed. Well, Judge Harrison said, her voice steady despite the grim news. Now we know. For certain this isn't just about one slap or one airline. You've threatened something valuable enough to warrant destroying you completely. Zara nodded, a new determination hardening within her. Then we need to find out exactly what that is, and we need to do it before they succeed. By midday, Zara couldn't escape her own face. Every local news channel featured her official police portrait alongside shocking headlines. Police Chief fabricated discrimination claims. Washington's history of race-baiting exposed. Airport incident staged for publicity. She sat in Judge Harrison's living room, scrolling through her phone in disbelief as the character assassination unfolded in real time. They're saying I have a history of false racism allegations, she said, the words bitter on her tongue. They're quoting anonymous department sources claiming I've used race to advance my career. Marcus looked up from his laptop. They've leaked portions of your personnel file, heavily edited, of course. He turned the screen toward her. An article displayed excerpts from her performance reviews, selectively chosen and stripped of context, to paint her as confrontational and obsessed with racial issues. How did they get these files? Officer Kim asked. Personnel records are supposed to be confidential. The same way they manufactured evidence so quickly, Zara replied. They have people throughout the system. The question is why? What makes Skyway Airlines important enough to warrant this level of protection? Marcus's phone rang. After a brief conversation, his expression darkened. That was my paralegal. There's a crowd gathering outside your house, protesters with signs supporting Thornton and condemning you. Protesters? Sergeant Diaz looked skeptical. This story broke hours ago. That's not a natural community response. Paid agitators, Judge Harrison confirmed, looking out her window cautiously. a standard tactic when corporations need public opinion shifted quickly. Zara's phone buzzed with a news alert. She opened it to find video footage of herself from 3 years earlier, during a tense arrest of an armed suspect. The clip was heavily edited, showing only the moment she forced the man to the ground, removing the context that he had drawn a weapon seconds before. The caption read, "Chief Washington's history of excessive force against white suspects." "That's from the Wilson arrest," she said, anger rising. "He pulled a gun on my partner. The full footage was reviewed by Internal Affairs and I was cleared completely." "They're not interested in the truth," Marcus said grimly. "They're creating a narrative, one where you're an anti-white radical who manufactured a discrimination claim against an innocent pilot." Zara's phone rang. Mayor Coleman. After a moment's hesitation, she answered on speaker. "Mr. Mayor." "Zara," his voice carried artificial concern. "I've been watching the news. These are serious allegations emerging about your conduct." "Fabricated allegations," she corrected, "just like the evidence Internal Affairs presented." A pause. "The public pressure is mounting. I'm fielding calls from city council members, community leaders, and major employers, including Skyway. I'm concerned about your judgment in pursuing this matter so aggressively." "My judgment?" Zara's voice rose. "I was assaulted on camera while conducting a legitimate investigation." "An investigation you initiated without proper oversight," he countered smoothly. "Look, I'm trying to help you here. The commission is meeting this afternoon to discuss converting your temporary suspension to termination. If you issue a statement, acknowledging a misunderstanding and drop all charges against Captain Thornton, I believe I can convince them to accept a resignation instead." The blatant pressure tactic confirmed what Zara already suspected. The mayor was deeply involved in whatever they were protecting. "I appreciate your concern, sir, but I'll continue to pursue the truth." The mayor's voice hardened. "I'm afraid you're not understanding the gravity of your situation. Your career is over, Zara. The only question is whether you leave with some dignity intact or go down fighting a battle you cannot win." "I'll take my chances with the truth, sir." After she hung up, the room remained silent for a moment. "He's scared," Judge Harrison finally said. "They all are. Which means you're getting closer to something important." Officer Ramirez, who had been monitoring social media, looked up from his tablet. "Chief, they're digging into your personal life now. Someone leaked details about your past relationships." Zara grabbed the tablet. Sure enough, an article featured quotes from an ex-boyfriend claiming she saw racism everywhere and couldn't maintain relationships because of her obsession with racial issues. The boyfriend in question had actually ended their relationship when she refused to ignore his casual racism toward restaurant staff. "This is getting ugly," Officer Kim observed. "They're not just attacking your professional reputation now. They're trying to dehumanize you completely." Marcus nodded grimly. Classic character assassination playbook. Professional, then personal, then complete isolation. They want you alone and discredited so no one will listen when you speak the truth. "It's working," Sergeant Diaz admitted reluctantly. "I've been texting other officers. Most are distancing themselves from anything connected to you. Even those who supported you yesterday are going silent." A news alert chimed on multiple phones simultaneously. On screen, Captain Maxwell Thornton stood at a podium with his attorney, his expression somber and rehearsed. "I want to express my deepest regret for the unfortunate physical altercation with Chief Washington," he said, reading from a statement. "However, I categorically deny any discriminatory intent. My reaction, while regrettable, came after repeated provocations and threats to use her position against me and Skyway Airlines." His attorney stepped forward. "Today we're filing a countersuit for defamation against Chief Washington. The false allegation of racial discrimination has caused irreparable harm to Captain Thornton's reputation and career. We have evidence proving Chief Washington has a history of making such claims for personal advancement." As the press conference continued, Zara noticed Judge Harrison gazing out the window with concern. "Eleanor?" she prompted. "We have company," the judge said quietly. A dark sedan had parked across the street, two men sitting inside watching the house. No attempt at subtlety. They want you to know you're being watched, Marcus observed. Standard intimidation. Zara's phone rang again. This time, an unknown number. She answered cautiously. Washington. Chief? The voice was female, unfamiliar, and frightened. You don't know me. I'm a nurse at Millfield General. I was on your flight yesterday. Zara put the call on speaker. I'm listening. I recorded everything on my phone, the whole incident. I wasn't going to come forward because I need this job. But what they're saying about you on the news isn't right. Hope surged through the room. Do you still have the recording? Marcus asked urgently. Yes, but people from the airline have been calling passengers, offering money for any videos and threatening legal action if they're posted online. They came to the hospital looking for me earlier. What's your name? Zara asked. Sofia Rivera. I can get you the video, but I'm scared. These people seem powerful. They are powerful, Zara acknowledged. But we can protect you. Can you meet us? They arranged a meeting at Marcus's law office, using a back entrance to avoid surveillance. When Sofia arrived, she was visibly nervous, but determined. Her video, unlike the edited clips circulating in the media, showed the entire incident clearly. Thornton's aggression, Zara's composed responses, and the unmistakable, unprovoked slap. This changes everything, Officer Kim said as they watched. Not quite everything, Marcus cautioned. It proves Thornton assaulted you and lied about it. It doesn't expose whatever larger issue they're protecting at Skyway. But it's a start, Zara said. With this evidence, we can approach federal authorities. This has crossed too many jurisdictional and ethical lines for local investigation. The decision made, Zara and Marcus prepared to take their evidence to the FBI field office. As they were leaving, Judge Harrison received an urgent call. Her face went pale as she listened. What is it? Zara asked when she hung up. I just heard. From Judge Raymond, she replied, voice shaking slightly. He oversaw my physical after the accident last month. He saw men in suits requesting my medical records this morning. When he questioned them, they claimed to be from insurance but couldn't provide proper documentation. What accident? Zara asked, confused. I didn't know you were in an accident. It was minor. A car ran a stop sign and clipped my vehicle. Judge Harrison's eyes met Zara's. The day after our first meeting about the Skyway discrimination complaints, I thought nothing of it at the time. The implications hung heavy in the air. If they had been targeting Judge Harrison before yesterday's airport incident, then the conspiracy was both wider and more long-standing than they had initially believed. We need to move quickly, Marcus urged. If they're investigating Judge Harrison's accident, they might be planning to use it somehow. As they left Judge Harrison's home, none of them noticed the small blinking device attached under the judge's car, or the fact that the dark sedan had disappeared, its occupants now calling in their movements to someone higher up the chain of command. Has this ever happened to you? Have you witnessed powerful people or organizations trying to silence someone speaking truth by attacking their character? Comment number 1. If you've seen how quickly reputations can be destroyed by coordinated smear campaigns, or number 2, if you believe the truth always eventually comes out. If this story of one woman standing against a system of corruption resonates with you, hit that like button and subscribe to see more stories about courage in the face of overwhelming odds. What kind of evidence could be so damning that an entire airline and city officials would go to these lengths to bury it? And with everyone turning against her, can Zara find enough allies to expose the truth before her reputation is completely destroyed? Stay tuned to find out. The FBI field office occupied an unremarkable building on the outskirts of Millfield. Zara and Marcus arrived separately to avoid being tracked together. Inside, they requested a meeting with an agent regarding civil rights violations, providing minimal details to the front desk officer. After a 30-minute wait, they were escorted to a small interview room where they met FBI agent Kimberly Rodriguez. Chief Washington, Agent Rodriguez said, offering a firm handshake. I've been following your situation in the media. I suspect there's more to the story than what's being reported. Much more, Zara confirmed, as Marcus unpacked his laptop and files. For the next hour, they presented their evidence. Sophia's unedited video, the pattern of discrimination complaints against Skyway, the suspiciously coordinated response from internal affairs, the mayor's pressure, and the professional intimidation tactics. Agent Rodriguez listened without interruption, taking detailed notes. "What you're describing goes beyond simple discrimination or corporate cover-up," she said finally. "The level of coordination between a private corporation, city officials, and members of law enforcement suggests something more systematic." "That's our assessment as well," Marcus agreed. "But we don't yet understand the motive. Why protect Skyway Airlines with such aggressive measures? The risk seems disproportionate to covering up discrimination complaints, as serious as those are." Agent Rodriguez tapped her pen thoughtfully against her notepad. "I may have some context that helps. The Bureau has been monitoring Skyway's parent company, Pinnacle Industries, for some time, though not specifically for discrimination." She hesitated, then continued. "I'm not authorized to share details of ongoing investigations, but I can tell you that Pinnacle has a complex corporate structure with interests in various sectors, including private security and correctional facilities." "Prison companies?" Zara leaned forward. "What's the connection to an airline?" "That's what we've been trying to determine. On paper, they're separate business units, but we've noted unusual patterns in their financial and operational integration." Rodriguez's careful phrasing suggested she was sharing as much as she professionally could. "I'll need time to process your evidence and consult with my supervisors. This may connect to other matters we're investigating." "We don't have much time," Zara pressed. "They've already broken into my home, threatened me physically, and are systematically destroying my reputation. Judge Harrison may also be in danger." Agent Rodriguez nodded. "I understand the urgency. While I work through official channels, you should continue gathering evidence, particularly anything linking Skyway's discrimination practices to broader corporate policies." As they left the federal building, Zara felt cautiously optimistic. Having federal interests provided some protection and validation of their concerns. Back at Judge Harrison's home, they found Officer Kim excited about a discovery. "I think I found something," she said, showing them her laptop. "I've been analyzing the passenger data from discrimination complaints. There's a pattern in how Skyway targets certain passengers." Her screen displayed a complex spreadsheet. "Minorities who are flagged for extra screening or removed from flights disproportionately end up being arrested for minor infractions, often after Skyway security calls local police." "What kind of infractions?" Marcus asked. "Mostly disorderly conduct, resisting airline staff, minor drug possession. But here's the interesting part," she pointed to another column. "A statistically improbable number end up in detention facilities, owned by Pinnacle Corrections." Zara stared at the data. "Are you saying Skyway is deliberately targeting minorities for arrest to funnel them into their own prison system?" "The data suggests it's not random," Officer Kim confirmed. "And look at this." She switched to another screen showing Skyway's security protocols. Their internal guidelines include profiles for higher-risk passengers that use barely disguised racial markers. The pieces were beginning to fit together, painting a disturbing picture. Skyway wasn't just discriminating, they were systematically targeting minorities as part of a pipeline to fill Pinnacle's private prisons. Judge Harrison returned from a phone call, her expression grim. "I just spoke with an old colleague who sits on the State Sentencing Commission. Pinnacle has been lobbying aggressively for expanded contracts and mandatory minimum sentences for exactly the types of offenses Skyway passengers are being arrested for. But that still doesn't explain the mayor's involvement," Sergeant Diaz pointed out, "or why half the police department seems to be helping them." A text alert chimed on Zara's phone. It was from Sophia. "Someone followed me from the hospital. Be careful with the video." Almost simultaneously, Officer Ramirez burst through the door clutching a file folder. "Chief, you need to see this. My cousin in Skyway IT came through." He spread several documents on the table. "These are internal memos about something called Operation Turnstile. It's a partnership between Skyway, the Mayor's Economic Development Office, and Pinnacle Corrections. The documents detailed a complex arrangement. Skyway received tax breaks and preferential treatment at the airport in exchange for helping to meet Pinnacle's occupancy quotas at their newly expanded detention facility outside Millfield. The mayor's office facilitated the arrangement in exchange for campaign contributions and the promise of bringing jobs to the region through the prison expansion. Most disturbingly, certain officers within the police department received bonuses for arrests that resulted in detentions at Pinnacle facilities. "It's a modern debtor's prison scheme," Judge Harrison said, the disgust evident in her voice. "Using racial profiling to funnel minorities into a for-profit prison system, with kickbacks all around. And when you started investigating discrimination at Skyway," Marcus added, "you unknowingly threatened this entire corrupt system." "No wonder they responded with such force," Zara said. "This isn't just about one airline or one incident of discrimination. It's an entire profit model built on systematic racism." As they processed the implications, Zara noticed a document with the police commission letterhead. It outlined a community safety initiative that essentially formalized the department's participation in targeting Skyway passengers. The signature at the bottom made her blood run cold. Commissioner Lawrence Palmer, the man who had championed her appointment as chief. "They're all involved," she whispered. "The mayor, the commission, my own deputy chief. They approved my appointment because I checked a diversity box, but they never expected me to actually investigate discrimination claims." "We need to get this to Agent Rodriguez immediately," Marcus said, gathering the documents. "This is conspiracy, corruption, and civil rights violations on a massive scale." As they prepared to contact the FBI again, they noticed a car slowly driving past Judge Harrison's house for the third time in an hour. "We're being watched," Officer Kim observed. "Again," Zara corrected. "But now we know why, and we know what we're fighting." They carefully made copies of all documents, storing them in multiple locations. As Marcus and Zara prepared to leave for the FBI office, Judge Harrison urged caution. "Remember, we don't know how far this reaches. Be careful who you trust, even at the federal level." Outside, Zara noticed a man on the opposite sidewalk taking photos of them with a telephoto lens. He made no attempt to hide his actions, another intimidation tactic. "They want us to know they're watching," she said to Marcus as they got into his car. "Good," he replied grimly. "Let them watch us take them down." At the FBI field office, they were told Agent Rodriguez was unavailable. "She's been called to an urgent meeting at headquarters," the receptionist explained. "I can have another agent speak with you." "When will she return?" Zara asked, suspicious of the timing. "I'm not authorized to provide that information," the receptionist replied, not meeting her eyes. "But I can pass along any materials you have for her." "We'll come back," Marcus decided, steering Zara back outside. In the parking lot, he leaned close. "Something feels off. Let's not leave the evidence with someone we don't know." As they drove away, Zara's phone rang. An unknown number. "Washington," she answered cautiously. "Chief Washington, this is Agent Rodriguez." Her voice sounded strained. "I've been reassigned to our Anchorage office, effective immediately." Unusual timing, wouldn't you say? The implication was clear. Rodriguez had been removed after showing interest in their case. "Very unusual," Zara agreed. "Before my flight tomorrow," Rodriguez continued, "I'd suggest consulting public records on property development near the new Pinnacle facility, particularly parcels acquired by Millfield Development Partners in the last year." She hung up before Zara could respond. "She's giving us a lead," Marcus observed, "and letting us know she's been taken off the case. Which means someone at the FBI is also connected to this," Zara concluded, "or at least susceptible to pressure from those who are." They spent the evening researching Millfield Development Partners, discovering it was a shell company that had purchased large tracts of land around the new prison facility shortly before the expansion was announced. The property values had increased tenfold after the announcement. The corporate registration listed several silent partners, hidden behind layers of LLCs, but one name appeared as the signing attorney, Sherman Whitfield's brother-in-law. The prison was never about jobs or public safety, Zara said as the pieces connected. It was a real estate play combined with a guaranteed revenue stream from inmates. They used public funds and racist policing to enrich themselves. And they're willing to destroy anyone who threatens it, Marcus added, including the chief of police. As they compiled their growing evidence, Zara felt a cold certainty settling over her. They were no longer just fighting to clear her name, or expose discrimination at an airline. They were challenging an entrenched system of corruption that used racism for profit, with tentacles reaching into every level of power in Millfield. And as they would soon discover, such systems didn't surrender without a vicious fight. The next morning, Zara woke to insistent knocking. Judge Harrison stood at her guest room door, her expression grave. "Your sister's been trying to reach you. Your phone is going straight to voicemail." Zara grabbed her phone, finding it dead. Despite being plugged in all night, the charger cord had been subtly cut near the plug, allowing it to appear connected while providing no power. Another warning of their reach. Using Judge Harrison's phone, she called her sister Aisha. No answer. She tried again, then again. Nothing. A knot formed in her stomach. She called Aisha's workplace, a community health clinic. "Ms. Washington didn't arrive for her shift this morning," the receptionist informed her. "It's unlike her. We've been trying to reach her as well." Zara and Officer Ramirez drove to Aisha's apartment, finding the door locked and no signs of disturbance. Aisha's car was in its usual space. Her purse and phone were gone, but her morning coffee sat cold on the counter, suggesting she had been preparing to leave when something happened. As they were examining the apartment, Zara's temporary phone rang. Unknown number. "Washington," she answered tensely. "You should have taken the settlement." The voice was electronically distorted. "Your sister seems like a lovely person. Dedicated healthcare worker. Volunteers with at-risk youth. Would be a shame if she disappeared permanently." Zara's grip tightened on the phone. "If you harm her..." "That depends entirely on you," the voice cut in. "Drop everything. The investigation, the evidence, all of it. Sign a statement admitting you fabricated the discrimination claims. Resign your position. Your sister reappears unharmed, and you both live quiet, unremarkable lives far from Millfield." "I need proof she's alive," Zara demanded, trying to keep her voice steady. "Check your email in 5 minutes. You have until midnight to comply. After that, Aisha Washington officially becomes a missing person who will never be found." The call ended. Zara stood frozen, the implications washing over her like ice water. They had taken her sister, crossed the final line. This wasn't just intimidation anymore. It was outright criminal extortion. When she returned to Judge Harrison's house to check the promised email, she found more devastating news. Marcus's law office had been raided by police executing a search warrant for evidence of conspiracy to fabricate discrimination claims and obstruct justice. Judge Harrison herself had received notice that her hospital records were being subpoenaed as part of an investigation into her mental competence following her car accident. And most alarmingly, Agent Rodriguez's superior had called to inform them she was no longer assigned to any matters related to Skyway or Pinnacle, and all materials should be directed to another agent. "They're cutting off all our avenues," Officer Kim said, the fear evident in her voice. "The law, the courts, federal protection, they're isolating us completely." The promised email arrived, containing a video of Aisha sitting in a nondescript room, reading from a prepared statement confirming she was unharmed but would remain in protective custody until Zara stopped pursuing false claims. A newspaper from that morning was visible in the frame, confirming the video was recent. Zara fought to contain her rage and fear. These people had taken her badge, her reputation, and now her sister, all to protect their profitable system of discrimination and corruption. "I can't sacrifice Aisha," she said finally. "She's innocent in all this. If you give in, they win," Sergeant Diaz argued. "And they'll still have leverage over you forever through your sister." "And if I don't, they might kill her," Zara countered. "There has to be another way." As they debated options, Officer Ramirez, who had been unusually quiet, suddenly stood up. "Chief, excuse me for a moment." He stepped outside, returning minutes later with a serious expression. I need to show you something. He led Zara to her car, kneeling beside the rear wheel well. Hidden underneath was a small black device with a blinking LED. A tracking device, he explained. I spotted it when we returned from your sister's apartment. I think they've been following your movements all along. Instead of dismay, Zara felt a surge of possibility. This explains how they've stayed ahead of us. But it also gives us an advantage they don't know we have. For the first time in days, a plan began to form. If they believed they were tracking her, she could control what they thought she was doing. We can use this, she said. Create a false trail while we pursue other avenues. Over the next hours, they developed a two-pronged strategy. On the surface, Zara would appear to be frantically searching for legal help, making calls to attorneys, former colleagues, anyone who might assist her. Meanwhile, their real investigation would continue through more covert channels. The first step was getting truly off the grid. Zara removed the battery from her replacement phone and purchased multiple burner phones with cash. Judge Harrison contacted retired officers she trusted to provide secure transportation and temporary safe houses. Officer Kim, the least recognizable member of their team, would continue gathering evidence while appearing to distance herself from Zara publicly. The tracker on Zara's car became their greatest asset. She deliberately drove to the offices of attorneys known for taking settlements, making it appear she was preparing to cave to pressure. Meanwhile, Sergeant Diaz and Officer Ramirez, using Judge Harrison's connections, began tracking shipments and personnel movements to Pinnacle properties, looking for where Aisha might be held. A breakthrough came when they identified a Pinnacle administrative building on the outskirts of town with unusually high security for an office facility. Surveillance confirmed unusual activity, including food deliveries for more people than should be working there. This could be where they're holding Aisha, Zara said, studying the surveillance photos. But we can't just storm in. We need leverage. That leverage came from an unexpected source. While investigating Pinnacle's properties, they discovered records of a storage facility registered to a subsidiary company. Officer Ramirez managed to access the facility using credentials from his cousin in Skyway IT. Inside, they found boxes of records detailing years of targeted harassment against minority employees and officers who had raised concerns about discriminatory practices. This is their insurance policy, Judge Harrison realized as they reviewed the files. Dirt on anyone who might threaten them, ready to deploy when needed. The files included surveillance reports on dozens of officers, judges, and city officials, particularly those from minority backgrounds who had shown interest in civil rights issues. Zara found a file on herself, started 2 years earlier, when she first began rising through the ranks. The detailed surveillance was chilling, but it confirmed their suspicions about the depth and longevity of the conspiracy. Armed with this new evidence and a tentative location for Aisha, they began planning a rescue operation. But they needed more help, more visibility than their small group could provide alone. We need to get this into the public eye, Zara decided. Not just local news that they can control, but someone with national reach and independence. I might know someone, Judge Harrison said thoughtfully. Rebecca Winters at the National Register. She's built her career exposing corruption, and she's been investigating private prisons for years. Can we trust her? Zara asked. As much as anyone, Judge Harrison replied. More importantly, she has resources and reach they can't easily silence. The contact with Rebecca had to be carefully orchestrated to avoid surveillance. Officer Kim arranged a meeting at a crowded shopping mall using multiple decoys and counter-surveillance techniques. Rebecca Winters proved to be younger than Zara had expected, but with sharp eyes that missed nothing. Judge Harrison vouching for you gets you 15 minutes, she said by way of greeting. Convince me this isn't just a personal vendetta over one racist incident. Zara laid out their evidence methodically. The Skyway discrimination pattern, the pipeline to Pinnacle prisons, the real estate scheme, the kickbacks to officials, and now the kidnapping of her sister. With each piece of evidence, Rebecca's skepticism visibly faded. This matches patterns I've seen in other cities, she admitted finally, but never this comprehensive or with such clear documentation. "Will you help us?" Zara asked directly. "The traditional authorities are compromised and they're holding my sister hostage." Rebecca considered for a long moment. "I've been investigating Pinnacle for 3 years. They've threatened my sources, tried to hack my accounts, even sent someone to break into my apartment." Her eyes hardened. "Yes, I'll help you, but we do this my way. No half measures." With Rebecca's resources and network of sources, they refined their intelligence on Aisha's likely location and developed a plan that balanced rescue with exposure. Rebecca had trusted contacts within federal law enforcement who operated independently from the local power structure. With their assistance, they established surveillance on the Pinnacle Administrative Building, confirming Aisha's presence through thermal imaging and witness reports. The rescue itself would need to be precisely timed. Too early, and they risked Pinnacle moving Aisha to another location. Too late, and the midnight deadline would pass. They settled on an approach that used Rebecca's journalistic cover to gain access to the building with Zara hidden in her news van, while Rebecca distracted security with questions about a feature story on Pinnacle's corporate citizenship. Zara and Officer Ramirez would locate and extract Aisha. The plan contained countless risks, but with Aisha's life at stake, they had run out of safer options. As dusk fell, they moved into position. Rebecca's news van, prominently displaying her network's logo, pulled up to the Pinnacle building's main entrance. The first phase of their desperate gambit was underway, with Aisha's life and the exposure of an entire system of corruption hanging in the balance. The Pinnacle Administrative Building stood silhouetted against the evening sky, its windows illuminated in geometric patterns. From their vantage point in Rebecca's news van, Zara studied the security measures. 2 guards at the main entrance, keycard access at all doors, and cameras covering every approach. "According to the building plans," Officer Ramirez said, pointing to a tablet, "there's a service entrance on the east side with lighter security. If Rebecca can get them to escort her inside for interviews, we can use her credentials to access that door." Zara nodded, her focus absolute. Somewhere in that building, her sister was being held against her will. Every passing minute increased the risk of Aisha being moved or harmed. They had equipped themselves with what resources they could gather: borrowed security uniforms from one of Judge Harrison's contacts, replica keycards programmed by Officer Kim with codes obtained from Rebecca's sources, and an encrypted communication system running through burner phones. "We've identified heat signatures on the 4th floor consistent with a person in a confined space," Rebecca said, showing them thermal imaging obtained from a source she refused to name. "Likely a security office or storage room converted to..." "Hold your sister." The nurse who had provided the original video of Thornton's assault, Sofia Rivera, had volunteered to join their team after learning about Aisha's kidnapping. Her hospital ID could provide additional cover if needed, and her medical training might prove valuable depending on Aisha's condition. "Remember," Zara cautioned the group, "our primary objective is extracting Aisha safely. The evidence exposure is secondary tonight." Rebecca nodded, though Zara could tell the journalist was equally interested in both objectives. "I'll keep security occupied for at least 15 minutes. That should give you enough time to reach the 4th floor." The plan in motion, Rebecca approached the main entrance with confident purpose, introducing herself as a journalist working on a feature about corporate citizenship. As anticipated, the security team was immediately alert, but also uncertain how to handle national media attention. Rebecca's press credentials and glib explanation about having already cleared this with Mr. Whitfield's office created just enough confusion to gain her entrance, with a security escort instructed to keep her in the lobby until verified. The moment Rebecca was inside, Zara and Officer Ramirez moved to the service entrance, using the first of their cloned key cards. The door unlocked with a soft click. They slipped inside, donning maintenance caps pulled low over their faces. Following the building schematic memorized earlier, they located a service elevator that would take them directly to the 4th floor while avoiding the main security cameras. The elevator required another key card, this one with higher security clearance. For a tense moment, the card reader blinked red. Ramirez tried again, adjusting the card's position slightly. The light turned green, and the elevator doors opened. "4th floor has 4 possible locations based on the thermal imaging," Zara whispered as the elevator ascended. We'll check them in sequence, starting with the most isolated. The elevator opened to a dimly lit corridor. A sign indicated they were in the records management section. Most offices were dark at this hour, with only security lighting illuminating their path. They moved silently, checking office numbers against their mental map. The first potential location was a conference room, visible through a window in the door. Empty. The second was a file storage room, locked, but quickly accessible with their keycard. Also empty. As they approached the third location, they heard, two men were conversing around a corner. Zara and Ramirez pressed themselves against the wall, listening. Whitfield wants hourly updates on the Washington situation, one voice said. She's got until midnight, but he's not convinced she'll fold. The sister hasn't caused any problems, the second voice replied. Keeps asking to make a phone call, but otherwise compliant. Just keep her secure. Once the chief signs the statement, they'll both be escorted out of state. Whitfield's arranged positions for them at subsidiaries in Nevada. Glorified house arrest, basically. And if she doesn't sign? There was a pause. Then we have a different problem to solve. Permanently. The implication sent ice through Zara's veins. They weren't planning to release Aisha regardless of what she did. And if she didn't comply, both she and her sister would likely be killed. The men's footsteps moved away, and Zara and Ramirez continued toward the third location, now with greater urgency. The room was marked Archive Storage, but their thermal imaging had shown human presence inside. The door required another keycard swipe. This time the light remained red. Ramirez tried again with their backup card. Still red. They've upgraded security on this door, he whispered. We need another way in. Zara examined the door frame, noticing a ventilation grate near the ceiling that connected to the room. There, she pointed. If we can remove that grate, I might be able to fit through. Using tools from their maintenance disguises, they carefully removed the grate. The opening was narrow, but Zara was able to squeeze through with Ramirez's assistance. She dropped silently into the darkened room, her eyes adjusting to find a figure seated in a chair, hands zip-tied to the armrests. Aisha, she whispered, rushing to her sister's side. Aisha's eyes widened in shock and relief. Zara, how did you… Shh, we don't have much time. Zara quickly cut the zip ties with a utility knife. Can you walk? Aisha nodded, rubbing her wrists. They haven't hurt me physically, just kept me here, brought food, said I'd be released when you dropped your investigation. They lied, Zara said grimly. We need to get you out now. She helped Aisha to the ventilation opening, where Officer Ramirez was waiting to assist. Getting Aisha through the narrow opening proved more difficult than anticipated, requiring precious minutes they couldn't afford to lose. Once both sisters were in the hallway, Ramirez led them toward the service elevator. As they rounded a corner, they came face to face with a security guard. Before he could react, Ramirez stepped forward. Maintenance, he said gruffly. Site. Manager called about an AC leak near the records room. The guard frowned. I didn't get any notification. The guard frowned. I didn't get any notification. Not our problem if dispatch doesn't update security, Ramirez replied with practiced annoyance. You want us to leave the leak until morning? Water damage is on you then. The guard hesitated, his eyes moving to Aisha. Who's she? Zara stepped forward. New hire, training her on night maintenance. Look, do you want to call the site manager? And explain why you turned away emergency maintenance? She pulled out a work order form Officer Kim had created earlier, brandishing it impatiently. The guard wavered, then waved them on. Make it quick. Sign out when you're done. They continued, toward the elevator, maintaining their unhurried pace until turning the corner. That was too close, Aisha whispered. There are more guards on this floor than usual tonight. The elevator arrived with a soft chime. They stepped inside, relief washing over them as the doors closed. That relief was short-lived. As the elevator descended, Zara's phone vibrated with a text from Rebecca. Compromised. Security knows something's wrong. Get out now. Simultaneously, An alarm began blaring throughout the building. "They've discovered you're missing," Zara told Aisha, pulling off her maintenance cap. "We need a new exit strategy." Ramirez was already texting Sophia and Judge Harrison, who were waiting in a second vehicle near the building's rear exit. "New plan. Meet at extraction point B." When the elevator reached the ground floor, they could hear commotion from the lobby. Rather than exiting immediately, Ramirez used the emergency key to hold the elevator open a crack, peering out to assess the situation. "4 guards at the main entrance, others searching the ground floor," he reported. "Service exit is our best option, but they'll be covering that too." Zara made a quick decision. "We need a distraction." She pulled out her phone and called, "Rebecca. We need chaos in the lobby right now." "On it," Rebecca replied. Seconds later, they heard Rebecca's voice rising dramatically in the lobby. "This is outrageous. I'm being detained against my will by Pinnacle Security. I'm going live right now to my national audience." The sound of guards rushing toward the commotion gave them their opportunity. They slipped from the elevator and moved swiftly toward the service entrance, staying close to the walls and using office furniture as cover when necessary. At the service door, they found a single guard posted. Before they could formulate a plan to deal with him, Sophia appeared on the other side of the door's window, wearing her hospital scrubs. She knocked urgently, calling out to the guard. "Medical emergency in the parking lot. Someone's collapsed." The guard hesitated, protocol warring with the instinct to help. "I can't leave my post." "He's not breathing," Sophia insisted. "I need help with CPR until the ambulance arrives." The guard made his decision, rushing outside with Sophia. The moment he was through the door, Zara, Aisha, and Ramirez slipped out behind him, moving quickly toward the parking area where Judge Harrison waited in a borrowed car. As they ran, Zara heard shouting behind them. They'd been spotted. "Move," she urged Aisha, supporting her sister who was weakened from her captivity. Ramirez dropped back slightly to cover their retreat. Headlights illuminated the parking lot as Judge Harrison pulled up, the car door already open. Sophia appeared from the direction she had led the guard, sprinting toward them. "Get in." Zara helped Aisha into the back seat, then turned to ensure Ramirez and Sophia were following. A shout rang out, followed by the distinctive sound of a bullet hitting metal near them. Someone was shooting. Ramirez pushed Sophia ahead of him, turning to return fire with his personal weapon, providing covering fire as they made the final dash to the vehicle. As Judge Harrison accelerated away, Zara looked back to see security personnel streaming into the parking lot. Among them, she recognized a familiar figure, Maxwell Thornton himself, pointing urgently in their direction. "Thornton is here," she said grimly. "He's directly involved in the kidnapping." "Explains why they went to such extremes to protect him," Ramirez noted, checking Sophia and himself for injuries. "This goes far beyond airline discrimination." They switched vehicles at a predetermined location, abandoning Judge Harrison's car for an unmarked van Rebecca had arranged. As they drove to a safe house on the outskirts of the city, Aisha filled them in on what she had overheard from her captors. They kept talking about Operation Turnstile and how my kidnapping wasn't authorized but was now incorporated into the containment strategy, she explained. One guy was constantly on the phone with someone named Whitfield, giving updates. They recorded a video of me reading their statement. Said if it went public, I'd be ruined professionally. "Did they mention anything about their overall operation?" Zara asked. "Fragments. Something about passenger selection protocols and detention quotas. They seemed particularly concerned about documents from a storage facility being compromised." This confirmed they were on the right track with the evidence they discovered. At the safe house, Sophia examined Aisha, confirming she was dehydrated and exhausted but otherwise unharmed. While Aisha rested, the team reviewed their situation. "They'll be hunting us intensively now," Judge Harrison observed. "We've directly challenged their operation and taken back a hostage. Which means we need to go public immediately," Rebecca argued. "It's our only protection. Once this story breaks, killing us becomes riskier than damage control." "We need more than just witness testimony," Ramirez cautioned. "They've already shown they can manipulate evidence and public perception." "We have Sophia's original video of the assault," Zara reminded them. and the files from their storage facility documenting harassment of minority officers. Plus my recording, Aisha added, joining them despite Sophia's protests that she should rest. While they were moving me to the building, I activated the voice memo function on my watch. It captured conversations between the guards discussing orders from Whitfield and the mayor about what to do with me depending on Zara's decision. She removed her digital watch and placed it on the table, including contingency plans if Zara didn't cooperate by midnight. The recording was damning, as guards explicitly discussed permanent solutions authorized by Whitfield, with direct references to the mayor's awareness of the operation. One guard mentioned previous cleanup operations that had been disguised as accidents or disappearances. "This is everything we need," Rebecca said, her eyes gleaming with journalistic fervor. "A corporate governmental conspiracy, using racial profiling to funnel minorities into a for-profit prison system, with violent enforcement against anyone who threatens to expose it." As they organized their evidence for maximum impact, planning, a coordinated release through Rebecca's national platform, and trusted contacts in federal law enforcement, Zara received an unexpected call. The number belonged to Thornton's wife, Janet, whom she had never met. Against the other's advice, Zara answered. "Washington. Chief Washington? This is Janet Thornton." The woman's voice was strained. "I know you have no reason to trust me, but I have information you need about Maxwell and Skyway." Zara put the call on speaker. "I'm listening." "Maxwell has been..." Janet paused, seeming to gather courage. "He's been abusive for years, controlling, violent when challenged. When I saw the video of him slapping you, it was familiar, too familiar." "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because tonight he came home briefly to collect a passport and emergency cash. He was agitated, talking about loose ends and cleanup. I've seen him like this before after incidents at Skyway that required what he calls special handling." She took a shaky breath. "I've been documenting his involvement in what he calls the program at Skyway. Recordings of him discussing passenger selection with Mr. Whitfield, copies of text messages, photographs of meetings with officers who give preferential treatment to their candidates." The possibility of such evidence from Thornton's wife was unexpected, but potentially invaluable. Still, Zara remained cautious. "This could be a trap to locate us." "I understand your suspicion," Janet replied. "I'll send you one recording as proof. If you want the rest, I'll leave it at a location of your choosing. I don't want to know where you are, for my safety as much as yours." The recording arrived moments later. Thornton and Whitfield discussing how to process a high-value candidate who had been selected on a recent flight with explicit mention of racial criteria and expected occupancy bonuses. It was exactly the smoking gun they needed, directly linking passenger discrimination to the prison pipeline in the executive's own voices. After verifying the recording's authenticity, they arranged for Janet to leave the full evidence package at a public location where Sophia could retrieve it safely. With each piece of evidence, the full picture of the operation became clearer and more damning. Skyway Airlines had been deliberately using racial profiling to identify minority passengers who could be provoked into reactions that justified arrest. These arrests fed Pinnacle's private prison population, triggering occupancy bonuses from government contracts. The real estate holdings around the prison facilities completed the profit cycle, with land values increasing due to the prison development that their own discriminatory practices were fueling. As dawn approached, they finalized their plan to release everything simultaneously through multiple channels. Rebecca's news platform, secure uploads to federal agencies not compromised by local connections, and strategic leaks to social media. Influencers with large platforms focused on civil rights issues. They scheduled the release for 9 a.m., when it would catch the news cycle at its most receptive. With just hours remaining before they took their stand, Zara finally had a moment alone with Aisha. "I'm so sorry you were dragged into this," she said, embracing her sister tightly. "When they took you, I nearly gave up everything." Aisha shook, her head firmly. "Don't apologize for doing your job, for standing up when no one else would." She gripped Zara's hands. When they had me captive, all I could think was how proud I was that you were fighting back against something this big, this wrong. Their moment of reconnection was interrupted by Ramirez's urgent call. Chief, we have movement. Multiple vehicles approaching the safe house perimeter. Somehow they had been tracked again. Everyone grab the essentials, Zara ordered. Evidence copies and communication devices only. We have emergency vehicles positioned behind the property. As they moved to evacuate, headlights illuminated the front of the house. Through the window, Zara recognized Thornton himself, stepping from the lead vehicle, accompanied by armed security personnel. Their escape route now cut off. They would have to face a direct confrontation with the man whose single act of discrimination had exposed an entire system of corruption and who now seemed determined to silence them permanently. What would you do if confronted by powerful people willing to break the law to silence you? Comment number 1 if you'd stand and fight like Zara, or number 2 if you'd look for another way out. If this story of courage against corruption inspires you, hit that like button and subscribe for more powerful stories of justice prevailing against all odds. Will Zara and her allies manage to release their evidence before Thornton and his men can stop them? And even if they do, will it be enough to bring down a system with roots throughout the city's power structure? Stay tuned for the dramatic conclusion. With Thornton and his security team surrounding the safe house, Zara made a rapid assessment of their options. Backup exit through the cellar, Judge Harrison whispered, pointing to a narrow door partially hidden by a bookcase, leads to a storm drain that runs behind the property. An advantage of using a safe house chosen by someone who had spent decades dealing with threats to witnesses. As Sophia and Rebecca gathered the evidence drives, Ramirez positioned himself to delay any entry while Judge Harrison led Aisha toward the cellar door. Before they could complete their evacuation, the front door splintered under the impact of a battering ram. Zara pushed Rebecca and the evidence toward the cellar. Go! Get that published no matter what. With practiced efficiency, Judge Harrison ushered the others through the hidden exit while Zara and Ramirez created a diversion, knocking over furniture to block the main hallway and triggering a small smoke bomb from their tactical gear. As security personnel pushed through the smoke, Zara slipped toward the cellar, intending to follow the others. A voice stopped her. Chief Washington, Maxwell Thornton stood in the haze alone, his airline uniform exchanged for an expensive suit that seemed incongruous with the chaos around them. We don't need to make this messier than it already is. Zara assessed her options. The others should be safely in the drainage system by now. Her priority was buying them time to get clear with the evidence. It was messy the moment you slapped me, Thornton. Everything since has just revealed how deep the rot goes. He smiled thinly. A regrettable loss of temper. One that could have been resolved with a simple apology and settlement. Instead, you forced this escalation. Behind him, security personnel were searching the house systematically. Soon they would find the cellar entrance. Zara needed to keep him talking, focused on her. An escalation that includes kidnapping, threats, and now armed home invasion, all to protect your passenger selection program. Thornton's expression flickered with surprise. You know more than you should, which makes this conversation even more important. He gestured to a chair. Sit. Let's discuss realistic outcomes. Zara remained standing. There's only one realistic outcome, Thornton. You, Whitfield, the mayor, and everyone involved in this scheme goes to prison. The evidence is already beyond your reach. A flash of anger crossed his face. Nothing is beyond our reach, Chief. Your sister's return should have demonstrated that. My sister is no longer in your custody, Zara countered, watching his reaction carefully. The momentary widening of his eyes confirmed he hadn't known about Aisha's rescue. Nor is your wife, Janet. This genuinely startled him. What are you talking about? Janet has nothing to do with this. She provided us with recordings of your conversations with Whitfield, detailed discussions of your passenger selection criteria, expected occupancy bonuses, the whole operation laid bare in your own words. The color drained from Thornton's face. His hand moved instinctively toward his jacket pocket, where Zara noticed the outline of a concealed weapon. You're lying. Janet wouldn't dare. She would and did. After years of your abuse, watching you assault me on that plane was the final straw. The recordings are being published as we speak." Thornton drew his weapon, aiming it squarely at Zara. "Tell me where she is. Now." Behind him, a security officer appeared. "Sir, we've found a cellar exit. Leads to drainage tunnels. They're escaping." Thornton's focus broke for just a second and Zara acted. With the defensive training of a veteran police officer, she disarmed him in a swift movement, twisting his arm and forcing him to drop the gun. The security officer raised his weapon but hesitated, clearly not prepared to shoot in such close quarters with his boss in the line of fire. That hesitation was enough for Ramirez to emerge from concealment and disarm him as well. Zara zip-tied Thornton's hands behind his back, using restraints from her tactical belt. "Maxwell Thornton, you're under citizen's arrest for kidnapping, criminal conspiracy, and assault with a deadly weapon." He struggled against the restraints. "This is meaningless theater. In an hour, I'll be free, and you'll be back on the run." "Maybe," Zara acknowledged. "But in an hour, your recorded confessions will be public, along with documentation of the entire operation." She retrieved his phone from his pocket, finding text messages from Whitfield demanding updates. With Thornton secured and the immediate threat neutralized, Zara and Ramirez made their own escape through the cellar exit, leaving Thornton restrained for discovery by legitimate law enforcement that Rebecca would send once they were clear. The drainage tunnel was narrow and damp, requiring them to move in a crouched position for several hundred yards before emerging in a wooded area behind the property. There, they reunited with the others, who had reached the backup vehicle. "Any problems?" Judge Harrison asked as they climbed in. "Nothing we couldn't handle," Zara replied. Thornton confirmed everything by his reactions. He was genuinely shocked that Janet had turned on him. "His wife contacted us again while you were dealing with him," Rebecca added. "She's safe at a women's shelter with a security team I trust. The complete evidence package is being uploaded to secure servers as we speak." With dawn breaking, they drove to Rebecca's news office, where she had arranged secure facilities for them to finalize the release of their evidence. The building had its own security system, and Rebecca's editorial. Independence gave them a temporary safe haven from which to coordinate their counterstrike. As they prepared the final evidence packages, Zara's phone rang with an unknown number. Cautiously, she answered on speaker. "Washington. Chief Washington, this is Sherman Whitfield." The airline CEO's voice had lost its earlier smooth confidence. "I believe we may have a mutual interest in de-escalation at this point. The time for negotiation passed when you authorized my sister's kidnapping, Mr. Whitfield. An overzealous interpretation of containment protocols by Thornton, Whitfield," replied smoothly. "I've only just learned of it myself." "Save it for your trial," Zara snapped. "We have recordings of you directly ordering it." A pause. "What exactly do you want, Chief Washington?" "Justice. Nothing more, nothing less." An admirable but vague objective, Whitfield's voice hardened. "Let me be specific. I have considerable resources and influence that extend well beyond Millfield. People who've challenged me have historically found their lives complicated. Permanently. Is that a threat, Mr. Whitfield?" "Simply context for my offer. Walk away now. All charges dropped against you. Reinstatement to your position with a substantial raise. A generous settlement for the unfortunate incident with Captain Thornton. In exchange, all evidence of broader concerns remains private." Rebecca, who had been listening, made a slashing motion across her throat. Zara nodded her understanding. "And if I refuse? Then I cannot guarantee the safety of anyone involved in this matter. Not you, not your sister, not Judge Harrison, or that ambitious reporter you're working with. Some forces, once set in motion, cannot be easily recalled." "I understand completely, Mr. Whitfield." Zara's voice was calm. "And I want you to understand something as well. This call is being recorded and will be included in our evidence release in exactly 43 minutes. Your explicit threats will make an excellent addition to the prosecution's case." Whitfield's composure finally cracked. "You've made a catastrophic error in judgment, Washington. By this evening you'll—" Zara ended the call. "He's panicking," Judge Harrison observed. making threats on a recorded line. That's not the behavior of someone in control. Which means we need to accelerate, Rebecca urged. They'll make one last desperate attempt to stop this release. She was proven right minutes later when their communications began failing systematically. Internet connections dropped, cell signals disappeared, even landlines went dead. They're using their government contacts to impose a localized communications blackout, Rebecca realized. Standard crisis management tactic. Do you have any communications they can't block? Ramirez asked. Rebecca smiled grimly. I maintain several independent satellite uplinks precisely for situations when powerful entities try to silence reporting. Old-school journalistic paranoia that's about to pay off. Using Rebecca's specialized equipment, they completed the evidence preparation. At exactly 9 a.m., the first wave of revelations hit the public. Sophia's unedited video of Thornton's assault, documentation of the passenger profiling system, financial records showing the connections between Skyway, Pinnacle Corrections, and city officials, and Janet Thornton's recordings of her husband and Whitfield discussing their operation in explicit detail. The impact was immediate and overwhelming. Within minutes, the story was trending nationally. Rebecca's broadcast, simulcast across multiple platforms, laid out the conspiracy methodically. Racial profiling used to feed a private prison system, with kickbacks flowing to officials who facilitated the scheme. Aisha's kidnapping and the attempted silencing of the chief of police added the dramatic elements that ensured the story couldn't be ignored or buried. As the evidence spread beyond their control, becoming self-sustaining across social media and mainstream news outlets, Zara finally allowed herself to breathe. They had done it. The truth was out, beyond the reach of even Whitfield's extensive influence. The immediate response exceeded their expectations. Federal agencies not compromised by local connections announced preliminary investigations. Civil rights organizations mobilized legal teams. Skyway's stock plummeted as boycott campaigns spread across social media. The mayor's office issued a weak statement about taking all allegations seriously that only fueled further scrutiny. By afternoon, Whitfield had called an emergency board meeting, clearly attempting damage control. But the evidence was too comprehensive, the narrative too compelling to be easily dismissed or countered. As evening approached, Zara received notification that federal authorities had secured warrants for Thornton, Whitfield, and several city officials. The conspiracy was unraveling faster than even Rebecca had anticipated. We should celebrate, Sophia suggested as they gathered in Rebecca's office, watching the continuing coverage of their revelations. We've actually done it. Not quite yet, Zara cautioned. Whitfield and his allies are wounded, but that makes them more dangerous, not less. They've invested too much to surrender without a final counterattack. Her warning proved prescient when Rebecca received a call from one of her sources in the federal prosecutor's office. They're preparing warrants, she reported after the call. Not just for Whitfield and Thornton, but for you, Zara. Me? On what grounds? Evidence tampering. They claim you falsified evidence about discrimination at Skyway. Despite all their revelations, Whitfield still had enough influence to manipulate the legal system against them. They're trying to discredit the entire investigation by attacking your credibility as the initial whistleblower, Marcus explained, having rejoined them after ensuring Janet Thornton's security. If they can paint you as unreliable, they create doubt about everything that followed. As they debated how to counter this final attack, Zara's phone rang. The display showed a name she hadn't expected. Thornton's wife. Janet, are you safe? For now, Janet replied, her voice tense. But that's not why I'm calling. Maxwell came home again, just for a few minutes. He didn't know I was here. He was gathering more documents, having a heated phone conversation with Whitfield. What did you hear? Whitfield has one last play, something about damaging information they've been saving. Maxwell said they're planning to release it at a press conference tomorrow morning. Did he say what information? No, but he kept repeating that it would destroy her credibility completely. I think they're going to fabricate something terrible about you, Zara. Something so damaging that people will question everything else you've revealed. This aligned with everything they knew about Whitfield's tactics. A final, devastating character assassination designed to cast doubt on the entire investigation. As they considered options to counter this threat, Rebecca received breaking news. Whitfield and the mayor had called a joint press conference for 8 a.m. the next morning to address serious concerns about the sources of recent allegations. Zara made her decision. We're not waiting for them to attack. We're going to confront them directly. At their own press conference? Ramirez looked concerned. That's walking into the lion's den. Exactly, Zara confirmed. They're expecting to control the narrative in a carefully staged environment. We'll disrupt that control by showing up unannounced. With the team's reluctant agreement, they planned their approach. Rebecca would use her press credentials to ensure they gained entry. Marcus prepared legal documents to be served on camera if necessary. Most importantly, Zara would wear a concealed body camera broadcasting live to Rebecca's platforms, ensuring that whatever happened could not be edited or controlled by Whitfield. As dawn broke on what promised to be the final confrontation, Zara found herself feeling strangely calm. From a single act of discrimination had emerged a conspiracy that reached into every corner of Millfield's power structure. Now, one way or another, that power structure would be forced to face the truth it had worked so hard to suppress. The City Hall press conference room buzzed with anticipation. News crews had assembled in force, alerted that Mayor Coleman and Sherman Whitfield would be addressing the baseless allegations circulating about Skyway Airlines and city administration. Security was tight, with officers checking credentials at every entrance, officers Zara recognized as being loyal to Deputy Chief Evans. Rebecca used her national press credentials to gain entry, with Zara and Marcus following as her production team, their faces partially obscured by caps and equipment. They positioned themselves near the back of the room, where they could observe without immediately being noticed. At precisely 8 a.m., Mayor Coleman stepped to the podium, flanked by Sherman Whitfield and Deputy Chief Evans. The mayor's usual confident smile seemed strained. Good morning. I've called this press conference to address the disturbing allegations that have been circulating about our administration and one of our city's most valuable corporate partners, Skyway Airlines. He adjusted his tie nervously. Let me be absolutely clear. These allegations are categorically false, manufactured by a disgruntled employee with a history of making unsubstantiated claims. Whitfield stepped forward next, his corporate polish on full display despite the pressure. Skyway Airlines categorically denies any discriminatory practices. We are proud of our diverse workforce and customer base. The edited videos and out-of-context documents being circulated represent a calculated attack on our company's reputation. He paused, his expression becoming regretful. It pains me to address this, but we believe the public deserves to know the truth about Chief Washington's history and motivations. This was the moment they had anticipated. The character assassination Janet had warned them about. Deputy Chief. Evans unfolded a document with theatrical gravity. Internal Affairs has completed its investigation into Chief Washington's conduct. We've discovered a pattern of falsifying evidence, intimidating witnesses, and using her position to pursue personal vendettas. He held up a folder. This file contains documentation of at least 7 previous incidents where Chief Washington claimed racial discrimination without supporting evidence. Zara activated her concealed body camera, nodding to Rebecca. Their countermove was ready. Rebecca raised her hand, identified by the mayor who clearly expected a softball question from national media. Rebecca Winters, National Register. I'd like to ask about the timing of this internal affairs investigation. How was it completed so quickly, when standard protocol requires at least 30 days for such reviews? The mayor blinked, caught off guard by the pointed question. Well, the extraordinary circumstances. And a follow-up, Rebecca continued, not waiting for his stammering response. Are you aware that we have recordings of you and Mr. Whitfield discussing how to fabricate evidence against Chief Washington? Murmurs rippled through the press corps. The mayor's face flushed. That's preposterous. There are no such recordings. Actually, a new voice called out as Zara removed her cap and stepped forward. There are, along with extensive documentation of Operation Turnstile, Your joint program with Skyway and Pinnacle Corrections to profile minority passengers for arrest and detention. The room erupted in chaos as reporters recognized her. Camera flashes exploded like lightning. The mayor stumbled back from the podium, while Whitfield's face contorted with rage. "Security!" he shouted. "Remove her immediately!" But the reporters had formed a protective barrier around Zara, cameras rolling, unwilling to miss this dramatic confrontation. Zara pressed her advantage. "Mr. Mayor, would you care to explain why your office authorized the kidnapping of my sister to silence this investigation?" The mayor's face went from red to ashen. "I never. That's a complete fabrication." "Is it?" Zara gestured to Rebecca, who played an audio clip through her equipment. The mayor's voice filled the room. "Just keep her contained until Washington signs, then implement the relocation protocol as discussed." Absolute silence followed the recording. Then, pandemonium as reporters shouted questions simultaneously. Marcus stepped forward, handing legal documents to a stunned Deputy Chief Evans. "These are federal whistleblower protection filings and evidence preservation notices. Any further destruction of evidence will result in additional obstruction charges." Whitfield, recovering faster than the mayor, grabbed the microphone. "These are doctored recordings and fabricated documents. Chief Washington is attempting to deflect from her own misconduct by attacking respected community leaders." His composure was admirable, but cracking at the edges. "The truth is, Washington has been orchestrating this entire campaign because she was passed over for a federal position she coveted." It was the moment Zara had been waiting for. "Mr. Whitfield, are you referring to the FBI liaison position that was given to Captain Thornton's brother-in-law last year? The same position that suddenly included oversight of airport security protocols for Millfield International?" Whitfield's momentary silence was damning. He hadn't expected her to know this connection. "I'm not familiar with staffing decisions at the FBI," he finally managed. "Then perhaps you can explain these text messages between you and Captain Thornton discussing how to, quote, ensure the right candidates are processed through the system for maximum occupancy bonuses." She nodded to Rebecca, who projected the messages onto the press room screen, retrieved from Janet Thornton's evidence package. Reporters were documenting every moment, the confrontation having exploded beyond anyone's ability to contain. The mayor, seeing his political career imploding in real time, attempted damage control. "These allegations will be thoroughly investigated, of course, but I want to emphasize that if any improper activities occurred, they were without my knowledge or approval." Whitfield shot him a look of pure venom, the first crack in their unified front. "That's not what your signature on the Operation Turnstile authorization indicates, Mr. Mayor," Zara countered as Rebecca displayed the document. "Or the property records showing your brother's company purchasing land adjacent to the Pinnacle facility 3 days before the expansion was publicly announced." The mayor's political instincts finally kicked in, self-preservation at all costs. "I was misled about the nature of that program," he claimed, physically distancing himself from Whitfield. "If there were discriminatory practices, they were implemented without my full understanding." Whitfield's face hardened as he watched his political ally crumble. "This press conference is over. Skyway Airlines will address these defamatory claims through proper legal channels." But it was too late. The story had exploded beyond containment. Live broadcasts were streaming across national networks. Social media was erupting with each new revelation. As security finally moved to clear the room, a commotion at the back door drew all eyes. Federal agents entered, led by a familiar face. Agent Rodriguez apparently returned from her reassignment to Alaska. "Sherman Whitfield, Richard Coleman," she announced formally. "I have federal warrants for your arrests on charges of conspiracy, civil rights violations, witness tampering, and kidnapping across state lines." As the agents moved forward, Whitfield made one last desperate play. "This is absurd. Washington is the one who should be arrested. She fabricated evidence, invaded private property, and obstructed justice." Agent Rodriguez smiled thinly. We have reviewed all available evidence, Mr. Whitfield, including materials provided by multiple whistleblowers within your organization. The warrants are quite solid. As Whitfield and the mayor were led away in handcuffs, the image captured by dozens of cameras, Deputy Chief Evans attempted to slip out unnoticed. Zara stepped into his path. "Going somewhere, Richard?" He looked at her with a mixture of defiance and fear. "I was following orders." "That excuse didn't work at Nuremberg, and it won't work for you," she replied quietly. "Agent Rodriguez, I believe you'll find Deputy Chief Evans was the primary liaison between the department and Operation Turnstile." Rodriguez nodded to another agent, who detained Evans as he protested. Outside City Hall, a crowd had gathered, drawn by the breaking news. As Zara emerged flanked by Rebecca and Marcus, spontaneous applause erupted. Among the onlookers, she spotted officers from her department, some looking shocked, others nodding in respect. The first major battle had been won, but Zara knew the war for justice was just beginning. The system that had allowed discrimination to become profitable wouldn't be dismantled in a day. But with the truth finally exposed, that dismantling could now begin. The days following the press conference unfolded in a whirlwind of legal proceedings and revelations. A special federal prosecutor, Judge Elaine Winters, was appointed to oversee the case, immune to local political pressure, and with a reputation for ruthless integrity. Whitfield, the mayor, Thornton, and several other executives and officials were held without bail, deemed flight risks due to their resources and the severity of the charges. 3 days after the arrests, Zara received official notification that her suspension had been vacated, with full reinstatement as chief of police pending a formal review by the police commission, now minus several members who had been implicated in the scandal. As she approached police headquarters for the first time since her suspension, Zara felt a complex mixture of emotions. Vindication, certainly, but also apprehension about the reception she would face inside. The department had been fractured by the revelations, with officers divided between those implicated in the corruption, those who had stood by silently, and the few who had risked everything to help expose the truth. The building looked the same, but everything had changed. Officer Ramirez met her at the entrance, now openly serving as her security detail. "Welcome back, Chief," he said with a genuine smile. "It's good to have you here officially." Inside, the atmosphere was tense but respectful. Officers nodded as she passed, some avoiding eye contact, others offering quiet words of support. Her office, when she reached it, had been completely ransacked. Drawers emptied, files scattered, even picture frames smashed. A symbolic last act of defiance from Deputy Chief Evans or his allies. "They didn't want you to have anything intact," Ramirez observed, surveying the destruction. "Psychological warfare to the end." Zara smiled grimly. "It'll take more than a messy office to deter me." She began methodically restoring order, a physical parallel to the work she would need to do throughout the department. By mid-morning, a group of officers had gathered outside her office, led by Sergeant Diaz and Officer Kim. They entered tentatively when invited. "Chief," Sergeant Diaz began, "we wanted to say, many of us knew something wasn't right, but we didn't have the courage to stand up until you showed it was possible." Officer Kim added, "We've taken the liberty of identifying officers who were directly involved in Operation Turnstile. The list is there on your desk." Zara examined the document, nearly 20 names, including several senior officers. The rot ran deep. "Thank you," she said sincerely. "Accountability starts now, but so does healing. This department needs to regain the community's trust." As she began the process of reorganizing the department, removing compromised officers and promoting those who had demonstrated integrity, Zara received a message that the newly appointed interim mayor was calling an emergency city council meeting. Her presence was strongly encouraged. When she arrived at City Hall, the council chamber was packed. The interim mayor, previously the city comptroller and untouched by the scandal, looked uncomfortable on the raised dais. Beside him sat Sherman Whitfield, second in command from Skyway, along with several Pinnacle executives who had avoided arrest and a contingent of private security personnel. "Chief Washington," the interim mayor began awkwardly, Thank you for coming. In light of recent events, we're trying to establish a path forward that addresses legitimate concerns while preserving economic stability in our city. The corporate subtext was immediately clear: damage control to protect business interests. These gentlemen have a proposal they believe addresses the issues you've raised while allowing for continuity. The Skyway executive stepped forward, all corporate smoothness despite the circumstances. Chief Washington, first let me assure you that the actions of Mr. Whitfield and Captain Thornton in no way reflect Skyway's corporate values. We are committed to implementing comprehensive anti-discrimination protocols immediately. He paused, for effect. However, we must also consider the thousands of jobs at stake. Skyway's continued operation is essential to this city's economy. One of the Pinnacle executives joined in. We're prepared to offer significant concessions: termination of all contracts related to inmate transfer from Skyway incidents, a substantial community investment fund, and of course, your full reinstatement with a public apology. Zara studied them carefully. And in exchange? The interim mayor cleared his throat. A moderation of rhetoric in public statements, focused prosecution limited to the primary individuals already charged, and a joint statement emphasizing that institutional failures were the result of individual bad actors rather than systematic policies. It was a masterful attempt at containment, sacrificing Whitfield and the others while preserving the corrupt system they had built. I appreciate the offer, Zara said carefully, but I don't have the authority to determine the scope of federal prosecution or limit the investigation. Those decisions rest with Judge Winters now. The Skyway executive's smile tightened. We understand that, of course, but your public position carries significant weight. Your cooperation would be noted and remembered favorably. The implied offer of future rewards hung in the air. Let me be absolutely clear, Zara replied, her voice level but firm. I will not help contain or limit this investigation. The problem wasn't just Whitfield or the mayor. It was a system designed to profit from discrimination. That system will be exposed and dismantled completely. The atmosphere in the room chilled noticeably. The interim mayor looked distressed at this breakdown of his attempted compromise. Chief Washington, please consider the broader implications, the economic impact. The economic impact of systemic racism has been borne by its victims for generations, Zara interrupted. That ends now. The Pinnacle executive abandoned pretense of cooperation. You should understand your position, Chief. You've won a battle, not the war. Our organizations have resources and influence beyond this city. This crusade will have consequences for your career and possibly your safety. Before Zara could respond to the thinly veiled threat, the doors to the council chamber burst open. Federal agents entered, led by Agent Rodriguez and Judge Winters herself. Gentlemen, the judge announced, this meeting is now part of our federal investigation into ongoing conspiracy and obstruction of justice. She turned to the executives. Your attempt to pressure a key witness into limiting testimony has been recorded and will be added to our evidence. The Skyway executive blanched. This was a good faith negotiation about. Save it for your arraignment, Judge Winters cut him off. Agent Rodriguez, please escort these gentlemen to federal custody for questioning. As the executives were led away, protesting loudly about attorneys and rights, the interim mayor sat frozen, his attempted compromise having spectacularly backfired. Judge Winters turned to him next. Mr. Mayor, while you are not currently implicated in criminal activity, your actions today suggest questionable judgment at best. I strongly advise you to cooperate fully with our investigation, rather than attempting to broker deals that obstruct justice. With that not-so-subtle warning delivered, the judge approached Zara. Chief Washington, I'd like to formally request your assistance in restructuring local law enforcement to eliminate the corruption we've uncovered. Your insights will be invaluable. Of course, Your Honor, Zara agreed. I'm committed to rebuilding my department with transparency and accountability. As they left City Hall together, Judge Winters shared news that hadn't yet been made public. The investigation has expanded beyond Millfield. We're finding similar arrangements in at least 3 other cities where Pinnacle operates detention facilities. This was never just a local issue. The scope of the corruption was even larger than Zara had imagined, a multi-state operation using racial profiling as a business model. The battle for justice had indeed just begun, but now it had the full weight of federal authority behind it. Back at police headquarters, Zara called an all-hands meeting in the main briefing room. Every available officer was present, the room packed to capacity. Some looked defiant, others nervous, many simply uncertain about their future under her renewed leadership. "I know there are questions about what happens next," she began, surveying the assembled officers. "So let me be clear. This department will be rebuilt from the ground up. Those who participated in Operation Turnstile or similar discriminatory practices will be removed and prosecuted. That's non-negotiable." Murmurs ran through the room, but she continued. "However, I also recognize that many of you were caught in an impossible position, pressured by superiors and a system designed to punish those who spoke up. For officers who come forward voluntarily, cooperate fully with the investigation, and commit to our new standards, there will be a path to redemption." The tension in the room eased slightly. "Starting today, we implement a zero-tolerance policy for discrimination in any form. We will establish an independent oversight committee with community representation. Every arrest, every detention will be documented and reviewed for potential bias." She paused, making eye contact with officers throughout the room. "This won't be easy. We'll face resistance from those who benefited from the old system. Some of you may find these changes uncomfortable or challenging, but this is the only way forward if we want to regain the trust of the community we're sworn to protect." As she concluded her address, the division within the department was evident. Some officers nodded in agreement, others looked resigned or resentful. The work ahead would be difficult, the resistance significant, but for the first time since her appointment as chief, Zara felt that real change was possible. As the meeting dispersed, she noticed a group of officers lingering near the door, speaking in hushed tones. When they saw her watching, they fell silent. The battle lines were being drawn, and not everyone would accept the new order without a fight. That evening, as Zara worked late in her restored office, she received an unexpected visitor. Mayor Coleman's former secretary requested a private meeting, arriving with a flash drive hidden in her purse. "I've been documenting everything for years," the woman confessed, her hands shaking slightly. "The mayor. He never thought I was paying attention, but I was. Meetings, phone calls, documents that were supposed to be shredded. The flash drive contained a treasure trove of information, detailed records of Operation Turnstile's implementation, meetings between city officials and corporate executives, and most damning of all, discussions of similar operations being established in other cities. They called it the model program," the secretary explained. "Millfield was the prototype. If it continued to succeed here, they planned to expand to every city where Pinnacle had facilities. This evidence would be crucial for the broader federal investigation, potentially exposing discrimination for profit schemes across the country. But as Zara secured the flash drive in her safe, she was acutely aware that with each new revelation, the stakes grew higher and the potential for dangerous retaliation increased. The forces they were challenging wouldn't surrender their profitable system without a final, desperate attempt to preserve it. That attempt came sooner than expected, and from a direction Zara hadn't anticipated. 6 months passed. The federal prosecution of Whitfield Thornton, the former mayor, and their associates proceeded methodically through the justice system. Despite expensive legal teams and delay tactics, the evidence proved overwhelming. Maxwell, Thornton was the first to crack, accepting a plea deal in exchange for testimony against the others. His detailed account of the passenger profiling system, complete with documentation of selection criteria that specifically targeted minorities, became the centerpiece of the prosecution's case. On a crisp autumn morning, Zara sat in the federal courthouse, watching as Sherman Whitfield finally received his sentence: 20 years for conspiracy, civil rights violations, kidnapping, and witness tampering. The former airline CEO, once so powerful and untouchable, looked diminished in his prison jumpsuit as he was led away in handcuffs. Outside the courthouse, Reporters gathered for Zara's statement. "Today's sentencing marks an important milestone, but not the end of our journey," she told the assembled press. "Justice isn't achieved through one conviction or one policy change. It requires constant vigilance against discrimination in all its forms." The 6 months since the scandal broke had seen dramatic changes in Millfield. Skyway Airlines was under new management and federal oversight, implementing comprehensive anti-discrimination protocols with independent monitoring. Pinnacle's detention facility had been transferred to state control, with a civilian oversight board that included community representatives from minority neighborhoods most affected by the previous discriminatory practices. The police department itself had undergone a painful but necessary purge. Nearly 30 officers had been removed, some arrested for direct involvement in Operation Turnstile, others resigning rather than face investigation. Rebuilding had been challenging, but the department was slowly regaining community trust under policies that emphasized transparency and accountability. Zara had filled key positions with officers who demonstrated both competence and integrity, regardless of seniority. Sergeant Diaz now served as her deputy chief, while Officer Kim headed a newly established civil rights compliance unit. Officer Ramirez had been promoted to lead community outreach, developing programs that brought officers into neighborhoods for positive engagement rather than profiling and enforcement. Back at headquarters, Zara found a letter waiting on her desk, an official invitation to testify before a congressional committee examining discriminatory practices in transportation and detention systems. Her exposure of the Millfield conspiracy had triggered investigations in multiple states, with similar schemes being uncovered and dismantled. The letter included a personal note from the committee chair. "Your courage in standing against overwhelming opposition has created a national movement for accountability. We need your voice in Washington." It was powerful validation of everything she had fought for, an opportunity to influence national policy. Along with the congressional invitation came another offer to head a new federal task force on discrimination in law enforcement, with authority to investigate departments nationwide. The position would mean leaving Millfield, moving to Washington, and operating on a much larger stage. Zara considered the offer carefully. The task force would provide resources and authority far beyond what she had as a local chief. The potential to create systemic change was enormous. But as she looked around her office, at the photos of community events and the thank you letters from citizens who had seen real improvement in police conduct, she realized her work in Millfield wasn't finished. The reforms were still fragile, the cultural changes incomplete. Leaving now might jeopardize everything they had started to build. After careful reflection, she drafted her response, accepting the congressional testimony invitation but declining the task force position. "The most meaningful change often happens at the local level," she wrote. "I believe I can best serve the cause of justice by completing the transformation we've begun in Millfield, creating a model that other communities can adapt to their needs." When she shared her decision with Aisha over dinner that evening, her sister smiled knowingly. "I never thought you'd leave before the job was done," she said. "It's what I've always admired about you. When you commit to something, you see it through no matter the cost." The cost had indeed been high. Though vindicated professionally, Zara still dealt with personal fallout from the ordeal. Death threats required ongoing security precautions. Former allies who had been implicated in the corruption still had friends and supporters throughout the city. Some business leaders continued to blame her for economic disruption caused by the Skyway scandal. Yet for every detractor, there were now many more supporters, citizens who recognized that true public safety required justice and equal treatment for all. The following week, Zara was honored at a national civil rights conference, receiving an award for moral courage in law enforcement. As she approached the podium to give her acceptance speech, she scanned the audience and noticed a man watching her intently from the back of the room. Something about his posture and focused attention triggered her instincts. When he realized she had noticed him, he didn't look away, instead meeting her gaze with cold calculation. With a shock of recognition, Zara identified him as one of Thornton's close associates from Skyway, a pilot who had been mentioned in several discrimination complaints but never charged. His presence at this event was not coincidental. After her speech, she discreetly notified security, but the man had already disappeared. The incident served as a stark reminder. The system they had challenged was larger than Whitfield or Skyway. With tentacles reaching into institutions across the country, the fight wasn't over. Perhaps it never would be completely. But the landscape had changed fundamentally. What had once operated in shadows now faced scrutiny and accountability. Where victims had once been silenced, they now had platforms and advocates. In her office the next day, Zara reviewed applications for the department's new cadet class, the most diverse in Millfield's history, with unprecedented numbers of women and minorities who cited the recent reforms as their inspiration for joining. This was perhaps the most meaningful victory, transforming the institution from within, creating a new generation of officers committed to justice rather than discrimination. 6 months earlier, a moment of racial discrimination had exposed an entire system of corruption. A single slap had set in motion events that transformed not just a police department or a city, but sparked a national reckoning. As Zara processed the final approval for the cadet class, her phone rang with a familiar number. Agent Rodriguez, now heading a specialized civil rights division within the FBI. "Chief Washington," the agent greeted her. "We've identified similar operations in 6 more cities. The pattern matches Millfield exactly. Airlines, private prisons, real estate development, and compromised law enforcement." "You need testimony?" Zara asked, already knowing the answer. "Among other things. This goes deeper and wider than we initially thought. We're finding connections to national political figures, corporate boards, investment groups, all profiting from the same discriminatory pipeline you exposed in Millfield." Zara thought about the pilot she had spotted at the conference, a reminder that forces still existed that would prefer to silence her rather than face justice. But she also thought about Aisha's words, about seeing things through no matter the cost. "Send me the details," she told Rodriguez. "I'll help however I can." As she ended the call, Zara stood at her office window, looking out over Millfield. 6 months ago, she had stood frozen in an airport terminal as blood trickled from her split lip, facing a moment of blatant racism that would have broken many people. Instead, that moment had become the catalyst for exposing and dismantling an entire system of discrimination and corruption. The journey had nearly cost her career, her reputation, even her life. But standing in her office now, reinstated as chief with the department being rebuilt on principles of equality and accountability, Zara Washington knew with absolute certainty, justice was worth every sacrifice. And though challenges remained, though powerful forces still sought to maintain systems of discrimination, the path forward was clear. The work would continue, one day at a time, until equal justice wasn't just an aspiration, but a reality for everyone, regardless of race, background, or circumstance. In the end, Maxwell Thornton's ignorant assumption that he could assault a black woman with impunity hadn't just led to his personal downfall. It had exposed and begun to dismantle an entire infrastructure of institutionalized racism. As Zara returned to reviewing the cadet applications, she allowed herself a small smile of satisfaction. Sometimes, justice started with a single moment of standing firm, even when the whole world seemed determined to make you back down. This compelling story illuminates several profound truths about racism and justice in America. First, it demonstrates how a single act of discrimination often reflects deeper systemic problems rather than isolated incidents. Zara's investigation revealed that what appeared to be one pilot's prejudice was actually part of an elaborate profit-driven scheme, exploiting racial bias. Second, the narrative highlights how powerful institutions can mobilize tremendous resources to protect discriminatory systems when they're profitable. From media manipulation to legal intimidation, from character assassination to physical threats, those benefiting from racism will defend their advantage by any means necessary. Third, it shows the critical importance of allies and evidence in fighting discrimination. Zara succeeded not because she fought alone, but because she built a coalition of supporters who contributed different skills and perspectives. Documentation and irrefutable evidence proved essential in countering the narrative created by those in power. Fourth, the story underscores how courage is contagious. When Zara stood firm, others found their own courage to speak up. From her sister to the nurse, from fellow officers to Thornton's wife, her determination inspired others to take risks for justice. Finally, it demonstrates that dismantling racism requires sustained commitment rather than quick fixes. Even after exposing the conspiracy, Zara recognized that transforming institutions and rebuilding trust would require years of dedicated effort. The most powerful lesson may be that change often begins with a single person refusing to accept injustice, even when facing overwhelming opposition. By staying true to her principles despite escalating threats, Zara turned a moment of personal humiliation into a catalyst for systemic change. Has a moment of discrimination in your life revealed deeper problems in an organization or community? Or have you witnessed someone standing up against racism despite the personal cost? Share your experiences in the comments below. If Zara's courage inspired you, hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories that expose injustice and celebrate those fighting to make a difference. What would you have done in Zara's position? Would you have taken the settlement or fought for justice no matter the cost? Let us know your thoughts. Thank you for joining us for this powerful journey from a single act of racism to uncovering an entire system of discrimination. Remember, like Zara, we all have the potential to transform moments of injustice into catalysts for meaningful change.